Hey everyone, Larry Vela here. Today we are going to go over my incredibly, disturbingly large and ever larger Tau army, and we're going to be talking about not only the army, but just kind of the nature of collecting big, huge armies and being a collector, being a hobbyist, and all the cool things that come along with it. So come on in, let's take a look.
All right, thanks for the intro, Big Red. AdamHarry here. Let's talk Tau for a minute. Obviously, you said you started with a very small Tau force to begin with, and the army obviously is not small at this point. Can you talk a little bit about that whole process? Like, what happened?
It kind of grew. I think all of us as hobbyists have had this happen before, where you start off with that one little small army and you're not really paying attention to it, and you don't even really mean to. Like you say, hey, I want to have like a 1,000-point army, and you have a few units, and then you just kind of add to it slowly over the years. Maybe it's in movement trays, or it's on shelves, or a little bit of it's here and there, or it's in your bags. And then, fast forward 10 years and you turn around and you say, I should probably pull this whole army out and get a look at it like we've done today. And I haven't done this with this Tau army probably in like 5 or 6 years. And I pulled it all out and I said, oh my God, it's huge. How did this even happen? And I think it's cool. I'm really happy that it's come to this. We counted it all up. It's around 100. It's a little under 200 models, just barely under 200 models. And I think after my next shopping spree, it'll be over 200 models because I have a problem with Tau. But so this army started. So I said, it's about 200 models, but this army started with an eBay purchase, probably 10 years ago. And
so you've been collecting this army for about 10 years now.
Yeah, and I would say that the original core of this army, it came off eBay, way early in the Tau's history, and I was immediately drawn to kind of the really interesting paint scheme, because, as you can tell, it's this kind of deserty, kind of brownish scheme. It has like creams and brown. It's a very non-imperial, non-space marine kind of a look. The
Right.
Eldar don't. You never see Eldar like in browns. It's almost kind of a naturalistic orc scheme almost, except on kind of the hard sci-fi shapes of Tau. And it was probably like 1,000-point army. It was one of those typical eBay kind of one of everything. It had like 1 unit of fire warriors and 8 devilfish and 1 unit of one hammerhead and like 1 unit of crisis suits. And then so I had that as a core, and that established the paint scheme. And then it had no crude. It had no there were no airplanes. It didn't have any of the other stuff. And then kind of slowly I would go and I'd buy I started playing, and as you start playing, you say, well,
I need that extra unit of fire warriors. Exactly. That unit of drones would be nice.
Exactly. That unit of 2 really it'd be good if it was a unit of 3. So you go and you get 1, and then there was a couple times where I would talk to a buddy, and I'd have a bunch of extra Space Marines on sprues, and he'd be like, hey, I have a bunch of Tau, crisis suits on sprues, and we would trade. Or someone would be getting out of the hobby, and they'd just be like, here's a Tau army that is, painted the wrong colors, and it would, there was at least two times where probably I got, like a 1,500 point chunk of Tau from a random person, and it would spend 3 months in the simple green,
right?
And
nobody's ever done that before.
Yeah, and you're scrubbing it, and I can't, I still have horrible memories of trying to get 3 layers of paint off of some of the broadsides,
right?
With toothbrush over my sink,
just going at it
on a Sunday morning, and it's gone through kind of weird phases too. Like there are phases where I could get I vividly remember that I had phases where people would just be trading. Oh, you want Kroot? Here, take them.
Right.
And, I'd get a pile of Kroot for $10 for someone who just wanted them out of their house. And then there'd be times when it was like, oh man, Kroot are really hard to find, and you can't get those models, or no, I'm going to hold on to my Kroot. So individual models kind of go in and out of fashion too, and that's kind of one of the things that I think what I really love about owning it, kind of pride of ownership, which I think is something that is such an important part of the hobby, and almost nobody talks about it, is that when you get to a point like this and you have this huge army, it's beautiful and it looks great on the tabletop. And I mean, let's say that the new Tau Codex came out, last week, like it did, or last month, and let's just pretend that the rules were terrible and the codex sucks.
Right.
And every now and then that happens,
Right,
any game
right.
company every now and then will just, have a misfire. But when you're that guy and you just entered the hobby 18 months ago and and you're all about the internet and min-max lists and you've built your 1,500 point army and it's hyper optimized and it's exactly the one list you're going to play and it's a tournament, ball breaker, and then your codex comes out and the rules suck. And lots of times you see those are the players who just they say, oh, this is crap, Games Workshop doesn't know what they're doing, blah 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 blah. And those are the guys who sell their army and then they're out and they disappear. But when you get to a point where you have a beautiful army and it's large, I mean, think about it. If you have an army like this, how many different types of lists can you build out of this? And you can just have it out. And I mean, I just love looking at it. It's fun, it's cool.
It's part of the collecting part of it, right?
Yeah, it's a giant, and I've been working on it for 10 years. I'm not going to sell this.
This kind of reminds me of like if you had a really nice old sports car or something in the garage. Everybody's got that crazy uncle that's got like the nice car in the garage, and he just kind of goes out there and like tweaks it every now and then. He might take it out for a drive on like a Sunday afternoon or something, but that's not his daily driver. It's kind of like it's the joy of collecting and tweaking something. It's not something that you're gonna just offload because it's no longer quote unquote good. It's your hobby. You hang on to it. You come back to it. You revisit it. When you do get a new codex, it's fun to bust out all the models like we have here. Go through it, rebuild some lists, see what options you have. Really, I think just being a collector on top of being a hobbyist, on top of being a player, you end up with massive collections that you just want to play. And you can bench them when they're you don't want to play, and then you can bring them out when you do want to play, and you can build whatever you want.
I totally. I always tell people. If you've painted, over 2,500 points of anything, and
just hang on to it.
You hang on. If your army sucks, and some armies suck. Some armies suck for a year. Some armies suck for 5 years. If your rules aren't awesome, take your beautiful models and put them in Tupperware containers and put them under your bed or put them in the closet, because I guarantee you that 5 years later they're going to be good again.
And you'll have a fully painted army.
And you're ready to go, and you will be kicking yourself. When that next codex comes out, or when some apocalypse formation comes out, or something crazy comes out and turns your army around overnight, and you're like, I can't believe, I painted, I put 3 years of my life into this collection, and then some random dude, somewhere has it, or got broken up, or whatever. And I think that it all goes back to, this is one of the things that kind of ties the community together and ties us together as hobbyists and wargamers, is that, yes, it's easier to get into other games that don't require painting and hobby. And those games will always be more mass market, and they're going to be larger, and they have easier appeal. And they're designed to do that. But, you really get the lifers, kind of, who are into our kinds of games, because, how much of this army is me? How many weekends and, and evenings did I spend? Sitting here and painting it, and because of that, I'm not going to just, throw it overboard, at the first sign of trouble.
So let's talk real quick. There's two things I want to hit on before the end of the video. I want to talk to you real quick about the color scheme, and then I want to talk to you specifically about some of the models here, because some of these are very kind of rare, and you don't see them very often. So let's talk about the color scheme real quick. You mentioned earlier you had a lot of creams. It's kind of a desert theme. Can you talk about how you did that? And again, I know you use paints that are 10 years old at this point, but can you talk about the vehicles and that technique you use to get the look that they have?
Sure. It's kind of, it is, I came originally from scale models, so I always kind of want armies that look kind of, a little weathered and a little more realistic, and they don't look, like they just rolled off a factory floor. So I was really drawn to this scheme. It does kind of have a little bit of that, obviously it's sci-fi, but it has that kind of edge of potential realism to it. It looks kind of camouflagey. It works with Tau models in particular, because they have just those really hard-edged panel lines on them. The Tau range lends itself to doing the kind of 90-10 primary color, accent color, and I just love the look. It's similar to kind of the classic Tau tan, but it's a different take on it.
Right.
You know, it looks kind of like a desert version of like a Tau army. Also, kind of when I was really getting into Tau, also the Forge World had just released the Taros campaign book way back in the day, which is set on a desert world. So this army just it really inspired me and drew it into and drew me into the army. And I remember reading Taros and being like, oh, you know, that was kind of probably my frenzied height of like, oh, I got to go buy more Tau and do this or that, you know, and do all that. As far as the actual paint scheme itself, it's super easy. Which is another thing that drew me to it. So in general, the entire army, there's a couple ones that where, you know, I didn't quite match it exactly, but you know, and you'll see through the years. Also, you know, some of these models are so old that just paint ages.
Yeah.
And as paint ages, as different brands of paint ages, they kind of weather differently.
Sure.
So, you know, my fluff excuse for it is obviously this particular Tau Hunter, Hunter contingent has gotten several waves of replacements, and those replacements, you know, some of them are newer and some of them are older.
Some are fresh off the factory line.
Exactly.
Some are a bit more
exactly.
wet. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Some are all faded, and some still have their kind of factory gloss, and some are all beat up and covered with dust.
Right.
Basically, there's I'm a giant believer in because I'm lazy in spray painting and saving time as much as possible.
Right.
Basically, this entire army is 3 colors. There's the default cream color, which is, I believe, a color that you can buy at any paint store in can form. I get mine from Lowe's, and I believe it's called like light almond. And it's
So it's a spray can.
yeah, it's
just
a
straight
spray can. It's 98 cents. Every you know, Walmart, whatever, you know, Krylon, everyone makes a version of it. It's just basically a really light cream almondy color, and buy it in flat.
Sure.
So you buy it in flat, spray paint the whole thing. Then I go back with I don't remember the exact paint, but there is a Games Workshop paint that this accent color that you see on all of the browns here.
Sure.
That is just kind of, you know, a medium, kind of a leathery tan, and they've changed its name several times. Once again, everybody makes it. You just get it. It's straight out of the pot, and we just run it straight. And because it's Tau models, it's just so incredibly easy.
Because everything's already divided up.
Exactly.
You just go paint in the lines.
Exactly. It's already divided up, so I just kind of pick whatever you know accent areas I think would be. You know, you don't go too much, so you know, just a few. So you know, on these, it's mainly around the engines. And you know, and then the nose cone, and you know, I put in minor variations here.
Sure.
So,
I noticed the green hammerhead, not hammerheads. The two on the
Devilfish.
Devilfish. Thank you. It was a shark. I knew.
Yeah, those are slightly different. What I did with those
Brain
is going back to the original eBay army when they came. There was one interesting thing, was that Pathfinders were painted in a alternative scheme. So as opposed to everything else in the army that was all you know, this kind of deserty tan with brown, the Pathfinders had more of a gray default color, and then they had a green camo pattern painted onto them. So when I added more Pathfinders, I kept that same scheme, and then I said, well, these are the Scouts, so I wanted them to have their own different vehicles.
Well, it's a great addition, because it's the same vein. You got the cream color going on, but then the green helps break it up and distinguish those two Devilfish as their unit transports. It's a great way to divide up your transports.
Yeah, I really like it because it's subtle. It's the same pattern that the other ones use. It's just 2 different colors, and the 2 colors it uses are the 2 colors that are the main colors being used on the Pathfinder. So I like it because thematically it works, and it ties the Pathfinders to their own vehicles. It also works because when I'm actually playing the game,
you know,
I can keep them apart. I can be like, oh, whenever I'm going to deploy Pathfinders, I'll use those, and it's very easy to kind of keep things apart on the tabletop.
So I also noticed there is obviously a tertiary yellow on a lot of these models. That's like for squad designation, and also
exactly.
The suits have the yellow.
Yeah, yellow is pretty much like the color of the elites. So the crisis suits have it. The sergeants in the chasseurs, I believe, in the fire warriors have it.
Sure.
Yeah, pretty much yellow is just the general. You know, this
guy's special.
Yeah, he's special. And then above yellow, red is the next color. That's like high-ranking officers. So the 2 chassos in the front have their red, and they have their little red stripe, and then the veteran sergeants will have yellow with red trim, so it kind of moves up the scale.
Gotcha.
So it's all normal, it's normal tan, and then you get yellow of your command,
also
and then red on top of that.
Also, thematically, it's a good way to tie stuff in. I noticed too, the missiles, all the missiles have blue tips, which is a nice way, again, to tie in across multiple units, that theme across the whole army.
Yeah.
Can you, I got away from this, but I want to talk about it real quick. You also did a real quick wash with the cream color. Can you talk about that process real fast?
So how I weather these things, it's actually really easy. First of all, it's on some alien world or whatever, so I just wanted to give them some kind of the equivalent of weathering on their forward leading edges. So there's kind of a yellowish highlight that you'll see is kind of on the front leading edges, or any place wind would be scraping away paint on all the vehicles. That is really simple. That is just that is yellow ink. That's old yellow ink that's slightly diluted, and I put it into a cotton ball. And I just swipe, and I just very gingerly, just kind of, literally just
the leading edges have that.
Dry brush the leading edges and just enough catches. And if it's too much, you can go back with a dry paper towel and just kind of buff it back. And pull stuff off. So that takes care of all of that. On the, as far as the actual, the tanks themselves, some of them have kind of a stain and they look kind of like weathered and beat up, and the same thing on all of the vehicles. The default, and some of the drones, pretty much anything that has a big open flat surface that's a surface vehicle. I have a very diluted old chestnut ink, but it's basically a very brown red ink. There's lots of versions of it. Right. And you just get that, dilute it down, possibly add like 1 drop of brown paint, so there's a little bit of actual pigment in there, so it has kind of a different grit, so it's not as kind of slick as pure ink. And then I water that down, and I'll use a very large, like a 1 or 2 inch brush, almost a
house brush.
Yeah, exactly, almost a house brush, and I'll just slap that onto the entire model, just slapdash and just load them with it, and then give it about 2 minutes, and then take a paper towel and wipe it off.
So right before it sets, pretty much, you've let it kind of start to dry.
All the cracks,
you hit it with the paper towel to strip off just that top layer, really.
And that cleans up the top edges, and it kind of settles, and it gives you kind of a randomly kind of weathery, organic kind of. That's an old scale model. Right.
So that's really,
and it's super easy.
That technique really, I mean, the way you're describing the paint scheme in general is just like, it's base coated. It's got the secondary color, which is in most of the cases brown. It's got tertiary color added, which can be weapons or whatever. You hit it with a wash, and then you actually clean up the wash.
Correct.
So it's really like a 4 or 5 step process, and then boom, it's ready to rock. And they look great.
Yeah.
So
and I've always been a big believer, kind of coming from the scale modeling days. Is it's interesting. There's scale modelers have been doing a lot of fairly advanced painting techniques for decades that are just kind of now percolating over into wargaming. And none of these things are difficult. It's just kind of quasi secret knowledge. So
and none of this was airbrushed. It was all hand painted.
Correct.
Because I know a lot of people go airbrush, which is fine. That's a different style.
Absolutely, it's a whole different style.
Again, you're coming from the scale modeling background. Paintbrush is more common, and all those techniques are again infiltrating to wargame, which is cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk models real quick. And I do want to call out. Yes, we know you have a Tau Air Force. Obviously, they're blue.
That is because they're the aircast.
Exactly.
And as opposed to earthcast, the different casts according to the fluff have these are completely separate organizations, and they they're not going to have matching paint schemes.
Right, which is cool. It's a cool way to differentiate them, obviously. Yeah. So we do see that, guys. I wanted to make sure.
and that's why.
That's intentional.
That is by design.
Yeah. Cool. So we've got a ton of really cool Forge World models. So let's go through. Let's work on the back here and kind of work our way around, because we have a lot of stuff you don't really see. So let's talk about that Air Force real quick. Can you list off the ships? What do you got?
Okay. So first of all, the big, huge, giant one in the front, that is a Tiger Shark. Yep. That's a standard Tiger Shark. That's not the Titan Hunter AX Tiger Shark. Mm-hmm. It has a pair of ion cannons that you normally see on the turrets of hammerheads on the front. It has a whole bunch of missiles, and it has several burst cannons. And then the you can't see it because it's directly on the underside of it. Is Tiger Sharks have a big, giant, like a bomb bay compartment on the bottom that comes, I believe, with 15 drones. So how you use a Tiger Shark is it's basically kind of a bomber / surface control, area support. So it comes in, it shoots things up. It's a pretty decent vehicle. It has a good amount of hull points. It's I believe a super heavy. It's like a medium super heavy flyer. And then it flies over the battlefield, and then at some point you say, that's a good spot to dump 15 drones and mess with them, and you dump your 15 drones out, and then everyone is like, oh great, here's a giant squadron of 15 drones I have to deal with. So that's the big guy in the center. He's on all of these are obviously not on game
custom bases.
These are on custom bases, which you have to with the Forge World models because they're just big and chunky. And
at the time when you bought them, there weren't even base options.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a wood dowel on a plaque from Hobby Lobby with some cork on it, and
based up. Nice.
Yeah, and there you go. So
two smaller ones.
Those are Barracudas, which are fighters. So pretty good. Those used to be kind of the original Tau fighters because they've been around for so long. Supposedly, I just heard that they've just recently gone out of production from Forge World, and the Tau now have their own 2 flyers that come in the Codex. But these Barracudas are good, solid fighters. They have 2 burst cannons on the wings. And they have an ion cannon up front, and they have you can see it also. They have some missiles that are kind of built into those little holes on the underside of the leading edges of the wings. So they're pretty solid.
And then the last 2 little fighters there.
Those last 2 over there, I am embarrassed because they're still on little teeny tiny flying bases. I need to put those are the 2 I need to actually go grab some plastic Games Workshop flyer bases so I can get them a little bit off the ground. Those are Remora drone fighters, which are pretty interesting. They're basically drones that have been turned into very, very small light aircraft, and they're kind of cool in that they have. First of all, they all fold up, so from a model point of view, they're really cool because they're one of the few Games Workshop models. They're like, hey, these are little toys, and they have moving parts, and like those wings on the side fold up, and they kind of fold it into this little folded up, much more compact version. Because according to the fluff, they actually get carried into combat by I think orcas or mantas carry like a whole bunch of them, and they just kind of fly through enemy airspace and just poop out a squadron of these, and then they go and patrol airspace. And they're interesting in that they have 2 long-range burst cannons, which is, and then more importantly, I believe they have a networking marker light, and they have a pair of seeker missiles apiece. So if you have Remoras lying around, they can light things up with those network marker lights and then fire off seeker missiles. Or if you just have them on the table, your normal surface guy, your Pathfinders and anyone else can be marker lighting targets, and then you can pull the missiles off the flyers.
Pretty good.
Which is pretty cool.
So let's talk. Everybody's probably wondering, there's some Kroot in the back that don't look like regular Kroot you may have seen. What the heck are those? Those
came out with the Taros campaign. They're pretty old. You very rarely see them. Those are Narlock riders. So they're basically Cav for Kroot. And there's a group of 8 Narlock riders over there. I forget their actual stats now. It's been years.
Yeah.
But they're absolutely stunning, beautiful models. And if anyone has any interest, you should definitely check out Forge World because they're so characterful. I mean, let's admit what they really are. These are American Indians on horses that have been put into the grimdark. That's really what they look like. Look like they're proud, they're warriors, they have their guns, they have their
feathers, which are their crests.
They have their crests, which are very reminiscent of Native American crests, and they're just beautiful. They're really cool. They give a Kroot army some extra speed, and they're good in close combat, and they're just the models.
They look cool.
They're just dripping in detail. They have these cool saddles, and they have little saddlebags with all kinds of all the bizarre crap that Kroot keep in their saddlebags. You got grenades back there. You got big racks of lamb, and all kinds of
helmet
stuff.
or 4, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then over on the left is a great Narlock,
which is probably one of the coolest models.
Yeah, which is a big, huge, giant version of the Narlocks that the normal ones are wearing, and that one has a 2-man team on it with a big, giant auto crossbow thing.
Sweet.
And that thing is also it's really fun. It's big. It's kind of cool. It's not going to go kill a Land Raider or anything, but it's fun. It just makes your games a lot more interesting. Nobody knows what it is. It's an absolutely awesome model, and it's going to get in there. And if you put it up against tactical Marines or Guardsmen, it's just going to go all crazy chicken and eat a whole bunch of them.
Well, that's great. There's a ton of really cool stuff in this. Obviously, they're Riptide in there. I don't see a Storm Surge yet or a Ghost Kill yet, but again, that's the benefit of being a collector, right?
It's too soon.
Too soon.
It's too soon.
You might get them eventually. We even have some sniper drones, which you hardly ever see. But Big Red, was there anything else you want to talk about this army? We'll just kind of wrap it up here. So it's been a long time in the process of getting this done. So any final thoughts?
I would just say that, the rewards of a big army are self-evident in that, even in times when I'm kind of, maybe drifting a little more out of the hobby, or I'm less interested in a particular army, it's really difficult at the end of the day to set up all your toys and take a look at them all and not get excited about the game and not want to play. I'm already, just pulling these guys all out and photographing them for the first time in 5 years makes me, I want to go, I just ordered all the Tau, I ordered Calyon and I ordered the Tau Codex, and I'm already thinking, you guys tell me in the comments below, what should I buy? Because I'm going to be getting more. This army is clearly not done.
Right.
There's a lot of cool stuff, it's
Ghost Kill.
It has a
maybe.
I don't know, that Storm Surge is looking pretty sexy.
Well, again, that's the benefit of being a collector. So, Larry, thanks again for your time going over this army, pulling everything out. I know it took a long time to do it, and it's a kind of an inspiration to see an army that's been in progress for 10 years. Just keep adding to it, keep working on it. So, thanks for watching, guys at home. This is AdamHarry and Larry Vela from BoLS signing off. Have a good one.